it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, leur 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Wednesday, November 13. How you doing, everyone? Thanks for watching on YouTube and on Facebook. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, you can, of course, do so. Tell your friends about it. It's absolutely free. The Sick Podcast. We talk Montreal Canadiens hockey weeknights, Monday to Friday at 10 p.m. And we have a special bonus show every Friday afternoon live at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So watch this Friday as I will be joined by Anthony Marcotte, who is the play-by-play voice of the Laval Rocket at BPM Sports. And, of course, he's also the Montreal Canadiens reporter for the radio station. And Matthew Chouinard of TVA Sport. That will go this Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by La Bittt Tibi. Let me say that again. La Bittt Tibi. They launched their new ultra lager, refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for cool fall days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can. Available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and it's ultra refreshing. Also brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. They are a top fleet employer in the country by Forbes magazine. And when it comes to transport, they are one of the very best. And also brought to you in part by Playground. Step into the world-renowned poker experience at Playground, where I was there last week on Saturday, and I have a feeling I'm going to be there this weekend on Saturday as well, where free food and drinks at cash game tables, a bad beat jackpot, weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service await you. Why play anywhere else? Just minutes from downtown Montreal, across the Mercier Bridge. Playground. Without further ado, we bring in our regular collaborator who joins us on Wednesdays. He is TSN hockey analyst and their director of scouting, Craig Budden. How are you?
I am very good. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to lower this a little bit so it doesn't glare at us.
Yeah, that's okay.
Cause us lots of problems. It just doesn't. Good. You know what I mean? There we go.
Yes.
There. The glare was just, there we go.
All good. Craig is on the West Coast, correct? Are you in Calgary?
I'm in Calgary. Yeah.
Yeah, at his house in Calgary. And we're doing this a little bit earlier this evening than the normally scheduled time. Let's talk Montreal Canadiens hockey. The Canadiens were off yesterday. They practiced today. Craig, one of the things we talked about yesterday with Brian Wilde of Global TV Montreal was rebuilds. There's many of us in Montreal, like, I'm not losing it because the Canadiens are losing more than they're winning. I'm fine with that, and I think that's par for the course. That's what a rebuild is. There's a lot of pain. Whether or not the Montreal Canadiens fan base are going to be willing to take that pain for as long as it usually takes rebuilds to take pain, that remains to be seen. But here we are in year 3. Marty St. Louis said last year at the end of the season, after the final game versus Detroit, that his team would be in the mix this year. That was going to be the goal. And Marty St. Louis reiterated that this year at the golf tournament. And so did Jeff Molson, and so did Jeff Gordon, and so did Kent Hughes. So what's bothered a lot of people is not every single player has progressed in the lineup, but Brian came on yesterday to provide some balance and to say there's not a lot of rebuilds that are always going up and up and up and up. You'd love to see progression, 60 points, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. But more often than not, he said, it doesn't work that way. And there's a lot of rebuilds where year 3 was worse than year 2. Year 4 was worse than year 3. And he gave some examples. He also gave examples of rebuilds that have done really well. The New York Rangers is one of them where they keep on being on the up and up. The Pittsburgh Penguins at one point, I think, for about a period of 8, 9, or 10 years, from 2005 when winning the lottery with Crosby, drafting Malkin the year before, they just kept on getting better and better for about 10 years. But what do you say to what Brian is saying, that if the Canadiens finish inferior to what they did a year ago, that it's somewhat normal?
Yeah, I would concur with Brian. You know, we want everything to be upward to what you just talked about, Tony. We want everything to go in a straight upward direction. Unfortunately, it's not the way that hockey rebuild works. It's not the way life works. You know, everybody thinks that you just gonna, you know, oh, there's the mountaintop. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We got to climb it. There's gonna be some different challenges along the way, and there's going to be some times where you're going to have to change course a little bit and try to adjust to changing circumstances. You know what really catches me here, Tony?
Yeah,
is that, and you said it at the outset, it's year 3. It's year 3. Like, you know, we're not even halfway through year 3. You're at a point where, okay, yeah, there's excitement about getting young players and drafting them. Then there's excitement of watching them come in and play and doing the things that they've done. And that is exciting, and you should get excited by that. But it's year 3. If you're the Buffalo Sabres and you're in year 14, I would say, okay, there's cause for concern here. But it's not in that space. It's not in that place. Mm-hmm. So to me, be patient. And patience is as big a requirement in a rebuild and the growth as it is as getting the right players and getting the right mix of players and coaching them right and trying to get things instilled. That's just as important an element as patience. Because what I will remind Montreal Canadiens fans of this is your choice is real simple. Be impatient and, you know, have them rush through it and it won't turn out as well. And do you want to go through like the normal course of progression and remember, normal course, or are you going to be knee jerk and do you want to end up where the Buffalo Sabres have been? Because the Buffalo Sabres are in year 14 and they've had all the same advantages that Montreal's trying to take advantage of right now.
So tell me what the Buffalo Sabres have done in these 14 years that the Montreal Canadiens have to avoid doing unless they want to be the next Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, well, I mean, number one is they've had such significant changeover in their leadership. Like, you know, the general manager's office, the coaching the position, and then they've changed players around. I mean, I say this, you know, it's a nice throwaway line. And I can joke about it and everything. But the Buffalo Sabres, they traded Ryan O'Reilly to the St. Louis Blues because they didn't like the fact that he said, you know, I'm sick and tired of losing. I don't want to be in this. I like this environment as one. Then they trade Jack Eichel to the Vegas Golden Knights because they say, you know, well, he doesn't fit here. And, you know, Jack, that was about the neck and everything. Then they trade Brandon Montour and Sam Reinhart to the Florida Panthers. That's 3 Stanley Cup champions that the Buffalo Sabres have contributed major players to. Ryan O'Reilly, Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Jack Eichel, leading scorer in the playoffs, outstanding two-way player. Sam Reinhart, the goal scoring and the brilliance. I mean, he scored the Stanley Cup winning goal. Brandon Montour on the blue line. I mean, so because of impatience, because of knee-jerk reactions, in my view, the Buffalo Sabres now, you don't think they wouldn't want a guy like Jack Eichel? You don't want a guy like Sam Reinhart? You don't want a guy like Brandon Montour? Like, I mean, these were all guys they had. They had all these guys. And so now, because of impatience, because of missteps, the Buffalo Sabres find themselves in their 14th year. And the opportunities they had, like I just named really good players. They had them. And now they don't have them. And now they're trying again. So it becomes a vicious circle. You're trying to catch up with your tail. The Buffalo Sabres, you know, they have good young players. And they have a team that you look at. But their impatience has led them to being in this spot for in their 14th year. Not where you want to be.
Yeah, so let me ask you about patience versus impatience vis-a-vis players that you have in your organization and players that you have in your roster. Like, for example, Caden Primo's name has come up over the past couple of days. He obviously did not have a very good performance Monday afternoon in Buffalo. He has not had a very good season thus far. He did not have a very good preseason. He's 25 years old. He's played over 50 games in the National Hockey League. I get it. We shouldn't have expected much to begin with because he was a 7th-round pick, 199th overall. And the majority of 7th-round picks don't end up playing a game of professional hockey, and he already has. So it's a win, I guess, in that regard. But, like, when do you know, as a GM, when to pull the plug on a player and say, okay, enough's enough. If he hasn't showed me something up until now, chances are he probably won't.
I'm going to share a story with you, and it goes back to the great Sam Pollock. So, you know, if we're going to talk about GMs, yeah, I've been a GM, and there's lots of people who have been a GM, but there's been no greater GM than Sam Pollock. So I'm taking you back to the Calgary Flames. They had drafted Gary Roberts, or mid-first round, somewhere in there. And Gary, you know, wasn't progressing. And there was a lot of consternation in the organization. Cliff Fletcher was the general manager with the Calgary Flames, and Al McNeil. So, you know, they were looking, and Cliff was talking around and spending some time exploring, you know, what they could do with respect to interest in Gary Roberts, and if there was a possibility to trade him.
Yeah.
So they come into the room. And they're sitting down and everybody's talking, and Cliff is laying out the different scenarios. He's laying out this one. He's laying out that one. And Al McNeil says, he goes, Cliffy, he goes, you remember what Sam always told us and reminded us of on a daily basis? You don't trade any player that you believe in until you've tested them. He goes, we have not tested Gary Roberts. So it's premature. Al said it's premature to be thinking about trading him. Well, we all know what ended up happening. They tested him, and he became an integral part of the success of the Calgary Flames for a lot of years. So the reason I bring that up is that, see, if Cliff was impatient, what would have happened? What happens if Sam was impatient with Guy Lafleur through his first 3 years in the National Hockey League before he put? And remember, Guy came into the league at 20, and you know, and I would be hardly called struggling what Guy Lafleur did. But let's say he was impatient. Where would the Canadiens have been through all that time? Yeah. Bottom line is, you test your players. So now I share that story with you, but I also bring this up. I think you have to look and say, okay, you look at Caden Primo, you've tested him. Now you look and go, okay, is this what he is? And then you understand, what do we have if we don't have Caden Primo, who will take that position? And do we have confidence in that position? And understanding that, is Caden Primo got the potential to be a core player? I mean, these are things you have to ask yourself. Like, you know, and so I think as you're sitting there having these discussions, you've tested them, you've watched them, you're going to have to project, and then you're going to have to make a decision. But I think they have to go in that order. I think they have to go in that order. It would be different if you haven't tested Caden, but you've tested them. So now you got more information, and now you can make a decision. But you better be careful about making significant decisions on players before you've done step number one.
By the way, that draft year, 1984, was a pretty good draft year for the Calgary Flames. You know what I'm talking about, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so for those who don't, that's the year that Mario Lemieux went number one to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Kirk Muller went to Jersey, and Ed Olczyk 3 to Chicago, and Ira Frady 4 to Toronto, and Swoboda 5 to Montreal, Craig Redmond 6 to Los Angeles, Sean Burst 7 to Detroit, Shane Corson 8 to Montreal, Bodger 9 to Pittsburgh, Daigneault 10 to Vancouver, Cote 11 to Hartford, and I'll stop at Gary Roberts, who went 12 to Calgary. So up until that point, Gary Roberts is arguably the second best player in that draft behind Mario, or third, top 3 on everyone's list. Maybe Kirk Muller's ahead of him, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah, for sure.
But again, here's the beauty of the draft. This is what we talked about, right? That it's not an exact science. In the 6th round, the Calgary Flames drafted Brett Hall. And Craig, in the 9th round, who was drafted?
Gary Suter.
By the Los Angeles Kings, Luc Robitaille.
Oh, in the 9th round. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Isn't that something? Luc Robitaille was drafted 171st overall, and he finished his career with 1,394 points in 1,431 games. So Luc Robitaille, out of all those players that we just talked about, he and Brett Hall probably had, the second and third best careers of that entire draft year. Hull went 6th round. Robitaille went 9th round. That's what the draft is.
Well, okay, so let me just go back and
I imagine they both slipped because of their skating, eh?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Why do players slide? Like, why do players end up in a spot? Like, understand the LA Kings didn't step up for 8 rounds on Luc Robitaille. So they were looking at the same things and maybe the same concerns. And anyway, it's why I say this constantly about the draft. And it's a 100% fallacy. Okay, Tony? It's a 100% fallacy when people say best player available. So who's the best player available in the 1984 draft? So you're drafting Mario Lemieux. There was no question. Best player, right? Okay, so everybody goes, best player available. Who's
Kirk
the best
Muller.
player available? Well, it wasn't, but it didn't turn out to be Kirk Muller.
Correct.
And Kirk was an excellent player. So again, don't ever buy into this best player available at the draft. Like, just don't. Because everybody's trying to assess. Now, that being said, I'm sharing that story about Gary and the Calgary Flames, and it's important that you go through those steps. You have to go through those steps in that order, or you're going to make mistakes.
So, I want to get back to the rebuild. The Canadiens, up until last game, had lost 6 games in a row, and they had lost 10 of their last 12. And then they go out and they win that game in Buffalo. But before that game in Buffalo, following that loss in Toronto on Saturday night, Kent Hughes is probably in his hotel room, or he's probably at the bar at the hotel. He's probably sitting down with a buddy or two, maybe by himself, and he's having a beverage. And he's probably thinking about his rebuild. And he's probably saying to himself, is this going the way I thought it was going? Now, you convened that not all rebuilds are, but what are the questions a general manager asks himself year 2 into a rebuild, year 3 into a rebuild, year 4 into a rebuild, year 5 into a rebuild, year 6, knowing that most rebuilds you can have drop, you can actually have a drop in points in the standings. What are the questions you ask yourself to know whether this rebuild you're going to be able to pull it off or not?
Well, I mean, you got to believe you're going to pull it off. If you start questioning yourself and you start, I'm not saying you don't ask yourself those questions, but you can't question yourself about where you're at. What's Montreal going to do if I ask you the question back to you, Tony? So let's say let's say Ken Hughes says, oh, this ain't working. What do they do now? That's what I mean. You better believe in it, because you didn't start this with an idea, and no way Kent or Jeff started this idea with the rebuild and got the buy-in of Jeff Molson by saying that, well, we'll just see how it goes for a couple of years. If it doesn't go, we'll switch gears. Because Jeff Molson go, what do you mean switch gears? We're going to go down one path and we're not going to be patient. We're not going to understand what the ram. So that's got to be laid out. I'm going to go back to what I think is critically important, is that, okay, so you get players, you trade for players, you draft players, you watch them come in and you watch them grow, and then you say, okay, what can they do? Let's see what they can do. Let's watch how they perform. Let's watch in this situation. And then you're constantly monitoring progress of individual players, and then how it's working for your team. Then the second, and I think this becomes a real critical part of where the Montreal Canadiens find themselves. Who are core players? Who are players that we feel can be, call them core, call them pillar, call them foundational players? You don't have to be a superstar, but you got to be you got to ask yourself, who are the core players? And then the third question after that is okay, what else do we need to supplant to supplement these players, to help them move along? I'll give you an example. In Minnesota, we had drafted Mike Bonanno first overall. We were the worst team in the league. We drafted Darren Hatcher 8th, Matt Tkachuk 8th. We had Lettinen. We had Lagenbrunner. We had a lot of good. And, there was some trades that were made. We traded for Andy Moog. We traded for some players that came in to try to help our younger group. And then we reached a point where we weren't moving forward. We were not moving forward. We were kind of in a place where, okay, what are we going to do? We have Mike Modano. He's a superstar. The first thing we did was we made a significant trade. We traded for Joe Nieuwendyk. And Joe Nieuwendyk came in and was a significant difference to our young group of players. And Bob Gainey talked about how much we had done with our young players, how much we believed in our young players, and how much they had progressed, but they needed help. And you don't just wake up one day and say, okay, we're going to go get Joe Nieuwendyk and whatever you want. I mean, Joe Nieuwendyk was a premier player, top player in the league, top center. And we had Jerome McGinley. And we knew Jerome McGinley was a good player. I've said this many times. We didn't think that he would score 600 goals, but we knew he was a really good player. But then Joe Nieuwendyk came in. Then we traded for Sergei Zubov. And then we signed Pat Verbeek. And then we had to add another goaltender. We added Eddie Belfour. And one of the most instrumental players in that whole thing to get our team, and then we're trying to go to that next level. But without those four players, I mean, we'd had a great year in 1997, but we just felt Andy was a little bit older and we just needed a little bit younger goaltender. And then we added Mike Keane in 1998 at the trade deadline. We brought in players that could still be really productive players at different levels, but we're going to help those young guys. If we just kept going with young guys, Tony, we were not going to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. And the Montreal Canadiens, they're a young team. They're young. You're not going to win in this league with young players. You can't do it. What I'm talking about young, I'm talking about a whole host of young players. You can't do it in this league. So Montreal now is evaluating those players. And when I say young, I'm not talking 19 and 20. I mean, Kirby Dach's young. Alex Newhook's young. They're young players. When we made those trades for Nieuwendyk and added those players, Mike Modano was 25 years old. So you got to continually evaluate where you're at with these players and then understand where else can we help them. We believed in Modano. We believed in Hatcher. We believed in Lehtinen and those guys, just like Kent and Jeff. And they believe in Nick Suzuki. They believe in Slavkovsky. Yeah. When they're the guys, those young guys, and they don't have the supporting cast around them, good luck. Bonne chance. That's all I can say.
Before we get to supporting cast, I think the second point you made was the core players. Identify your core players. So my question to you is, I'm sure when they made the move for Kirby Dach a couple of years ago at the draft, they were hoping that he was going to end up being a core player on the team. So far, he hasn't proven to be. You and I have had this conversation over the past couple of weeks. With each passing day, more and more people are starting to feel like Kirby Dach is probably more of a winger than he is of a centerman. So at that point, you're a core centerman away. My question to you is, based on what you've seen from Demidov, does Demidov, who's an elite playmaker as well as an elite goal scorer, can he end up being a centerman? Based on what you've seen from Michael Hage, is it, can we think that he can go from the University of Michigan, where he's got a point per game this year, 9 games, 9 points, to being on the Montreal Canadiens next year and being a second line centerman? Can Oliver Cap is the solution within the organization? Yes or no?
Well, let me answer it this way. Yes, for the longer term. No, in the shorter term. If you want to take Michael Hage and put him in next year as your second line center, you're going to be a bottom 5 team in the league. Simple as that. So, yeah, can you put him in there? Yeah, you can put him in there. You want to bring Oliver Kapanen in there next year as a young guy? Yeah, you're going to remain in maybe that bottom 8 teams. What you're trying to do is move from one tier to the next and upward. And where Montreal now is, they're sliding in that bottom 8 group, and that's what people are concerned about. But you bring up Kirby Dach, so you trade for him, and you trade for a young player, and you go, okay, he's promising. Here's what we can do. So you talk about Kent Hughes on Saturday night. So Kent, and these are the conversations that are ongoing. Okay, what do we see in Kirby? Okay, can we play him here? Is he better going to be here? Okay, did we over-evaluate him? But is he still somebody that can be a good player for us? Is he still somebody that can play in a different area? You're doing that with all your players, and you got to be doing it constantly. But when I say yes, you can have young players. And you want to build with young players over time. But if you're going to try to win with a larger group of young players, Tony, your chances are just no, there's zero. There's zero. Go back, go look at what Glenn Sather did in Edmonton when he had Gretzky and Messier and all those young guys. Just go look at who he surrounded those players with. He didn't throw them to the Wolves. As great as they were and as good as they ended up being, Glenn didn't throw them to the Wolves.
You know, Kirby Dach is a former third pick overall in the, what was it, the 2019 draft.
Yep.
There was another former third pick overall that was acquired by a team 1 week after, in the summer of 22, that the Canadiens traded for Kirby Dach. 1 week after the Canadiens traded for Kirby Dach, the Washington Capitals signed Dylan Strome to a 1-year deal at $3.5 million. And a couple of years later, 2.5 years later, Dylan Strome is absolutely on fire for the Washington Capitals. I guess the Canadiens are hoping that Kirby Dach can take a page out of Dylan Strome's book, huh?
Yeah, there's no question. You're always hoping that the players you have and players you watch them work and you watch them try to push. I mean, Tony, you're not working with players that aren't good people, that aren't dedicated. But and I'm gonna quote Bob Gainey. Bob Gainey, he said sometimes a player's trajectory doesn't intersect with a team's needs at the present time. So changes happen. And it doesn't mean that player can't go somewhere else, but teams' needs at different moments in time might not intersect with where the player's at in terms of his development. Dylan Strome's a great example of that. And now Nick Backstrom goes out, and his career is over because of injury. Now Dylan Strome, who's a similar type playmaker, he's found that chemistry with Alexander Ovechkin. And this is going to happen. We see that happen over the course of time. And again, it's not just about being patient. It's also about being patient, because if you're waiting for 100% information to make your decision, you're never going to make a decision, because you're never going to have 100% information. You got to take in as much information as you can and go, okay, here's what we believe. And if you can improve your team, and a player goes somewhere else and does well, okay, that's fine. But you can't be thinking about, he goes somewhere else. Well, what does this mean and everything? Like that's not what it's about.
Okay, so then you said supplement the supporting cast.
Yep.
So they have a supporting cast right now. So they have those supplemental players, but those
who are they?
Well,
who they are?
They're players from the previous regime that were acquired by the previous regime and put in their contract long-term under the previous regime, and some of them will probably leave the organization. So, for example, at the forward position, Christian Dvorak and Yoel Armia are in the final year of their contract. I believe they will be traded before the deadline. Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher, and God love Brendan, I think he's having a great season.
He is.
After this season, they'll both have 2 years left, and I don't think they'll be Montreal Canadiens after that. So how does this, getting these players to supplement the core, how does this transition take place? Like, if there's players that are there already, are you looking to trade those players for other players who will be those complementary players?
Did you hear what I said? I said Nieuwendyk, Zuboff, Verbeek, Belfour, and Mike Keane.
Yeah.
It's not just going and getting players. You better go and find yourself some really good players. And you better wait a sec. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, I know. Everybody go tell me. You know what the job is of a general manager? It's to do the hard things. And I don't want to hear how hard it is for a general manager. You get paid very well, and that's the job. You're $1 billion business. And if you're going to tell me how hard it is, I'll go get another general manager. I don't want to hear about it, Tony. Don't ever bring it up. So what does Kelly McCrimmon go and do? Okay, let me just see. He goes, well, we got a bunch of young players. He goes and gets Mark Stone. He goes and gets Jack Eichel. He trades for Chandler Stevenson. He goes and gets Ivan Barbashev. Like, yeah, okay. Like, what about what Bill Zito did down in Florida? He has Jonathan Huberdeau. He goes, wait, no, we got to change some things here. Like, yeah, I know it's hard. And if you're not going to accomplish the hard things, you're not winning. So I don't want to hear anything about how hard. And the guys you just mentioned, and again, I'm going to keep Brendan out of this because Brendan has been a great Montreal Canadian with his spirit and everything, and I'm so happy to see him playing. Those other guys are not players that make a difference to your team.
No, you're right. And I talked about Bill Zito. He traded a 115-point player in Jonathan Huberdeau, but that deal worked out pretty good. They won the Stanley Cup after that deal was done, of course, with Matthew Tkachuk and company. All right, okay. So Samuel Montembeault it's been shaky for him this year, but it's not the best defensive coverage we've seen. They don't have the best defensive players. They have a lot of young players on defense. We know that he obviously has a goal this season. He wants to be one of Canada's goalies at the Four Nations Cup. As it stands, right now, today, on this Wednesday, November 13th, if the Four Nations Cup was tomorrow and Canada has a game, who's in between the pipes for game one?
I don't think there's any question that it's Jordan Binnington right now. Aiden Hill has struggled. Stuart Skinner's been up and down. Montembeault's been up and down. I don't think they have any other choice but to say, Jordan, get in there and lead us. In fact, at this point in time on November the 13th, I don't think it's close.
You don't think it's close? They really okay. The number
on November 13th. On November 13th. Okay.
Yes.
That's it. On November 13th today, I don't think it's close. I think it's clear cut Jordan Binnington.
The number 3 goaltender, we've seen this before in the past on several occasions, has been a veteran, because the number 3 usually doesn't end up being a guy who ends up playing, but he's there to be the good team guy and to be happy to be number 3 support. Would Marc-Andre Fleury be that guy?
Listen, Marc-Andre Fleury is one of the finest people you're ever going to meet. One of the greatest teammates that's ever been around. I mean, when I talk about Marc-Andre Fleury, you're talking about somebody. Have there been teammates as good as Marc-Andre? Yeah, none better. There's nobody that's better than Marc-Andre. Yeah. And we know what he is. So, absolutely, if it's me with all the uncertainty with around the other guys, yes, I'm right with you.
You said before. You talked about believing in the rebuild, and you said, well, I'm sure they believe in the rebuild, and definitely they do, because it was just like 24 hours ago that Kent Hughes came out and said, listen, we're not going to make a panic move here.
No,
there's no Band-Aid here. We want to play young players. They're going to make mistakes. If we bring in more veteran players to replace them, will they make less mistakes? Yes. Will we probably win more games? Yes. But we're not going to be advancing the project that we have, because then in 2 or 3 years, when we finally want to bring in those young players, at that point, we're probably going to be wanting to win, but they're probably going to be making those mistakes that they're supposed to be learning from now. And so you just end up delaying the whole rebuild. So, patience, everyone, patience. We're not panicking. There's no Band-Aid. It sounds like a GM who will stick to the plan. There's no doubt about it.
I think so. When Jeff Molson, you talked about at the golf tournament at the outset of the season.
Yeah.
And Jeff Molson talked about, it wasn't an easy decision to make about this is the path they were going to take.
Mm-hmm.
But he said he's been encouraged by what the fans and how they've embraced it. So again, everything doesn't always go exactly the way you'd like it. And again, there's going to be some bumps along the road, and Montreal Canadiens are experiencing that. What you can't do, to Kent's point, is just do something knee-jerk or panic. You just can't. Listen, I joke about this all the time. When your team is struggling and you're sitting there, the other GMs, they're so ready to help you. They're phoning Kent Hughes. Kent Hughes is in the deep water, and they're telling Kent, I got a life jacket for you, and they're ready to throw you a life jacket. And then they throw you you think you're getting a life jacket. You know what it is? It's an anchor. No GM in this league is here to help Kent Hughes. So if you're not ready to be patient and understand where you're at and understand that there's going to be some bumps along the road, guess what? You're going to get that anchor and you're going to sink.
The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Betway, a leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go on Betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 years of age and older, and play responsibly. A shout out as well to one of our proud sponsors, which is Fruiterie de l'Art, a family-run business, mainstay in the LaSalle community since 1995. Proud to continue offering the same fresh foods and flavors they have for the past 30 years, from fresh fruits and produce delivered daily to an ever-expanding assortment of deli meats, cheeses, and sandwiches. You'll find personalized service and friendly faces that make you feel like family, and we say hello to them. All right, okay. Speaking of this rebuild now, so one of your colleagues, Jeff O'Neill, brought this up on Overdrive on his radio show a couple of days ago in regards to Lane Hutson. Did you hear it? What I'm going to say? Did you?
No, I didn't hear it.
Okay. He suggested the Montreal Canadiens send Lane Hutson to the Laval Rocket so that he can remove himself from what is a difficult culture in losing. So he says the Canadiens are a losing team. Usually that doesn't provide a good culture. It's not a good atmosphere. Get him out of there so he doesn't see it and he doesn't taste it, and let him go to Laval and dominate. The challenge is, I wouldn't say he's dominating here, but he's playing really, really well with the Canadiens. Your thoughts on what Jeff had to say? I understand the reasoning, by the way. I don't agree with him, but I understand the reasoning.
Yeah, no, I understand the premise of what he's trying to say, but there's a difference between a losing environment and a toxic environment. And right now, the Canadiens find themselves in the first, but not the latter. I mean, you have people that are invested on a daily basis with the players. They're embedded with the players and embedded together to help this move ahead. You have a GM that's patient, that's not ready to do anything knee-jerk, nothing panicky. And so nobody wants to lose, Tony. We all know that. But I say this, I've watched Lane Hutson. Lane Hutson is like Teflon. Make him a big mistake like he did earlier in the season, that's not going to stick to him. Losing right now, that's not going to stick to him. He's a resilient young person. He's dealt with adversity over the course of his career. This is just another experience for him. You're evaluating Lane Hutson and others, not based on the environment, and they're not winning right now, and that can be challenging. But is he in over his head? Is he feeling overwhelmed? And this is where, as a manager and as a coach, you're spending all the time on a regular basis with your players. That's why I said they're embedded. It's not. This is a good environment in Montreal. It's a good environment with caring people and people that are digging in with the players. And so unless you see in their conversations and your daily interactions with the players, and maybe somebody sees and goes, hey, what about Lane? Well, let's figure out where he's at. Is this affecting him? No, he's fine. You make your decisions based on that. I don't think you make it based on what the outside record is. Like I said, I understand what Jeff's premise is. I think you have to go much, much deeper than just looking at the record and when you're making decisions.
What did you think of the Hockey Hall of Fame a couple of nights ago?
I thought it was – I think the Hockey Hall of Fame every year is fantastic, Tony. I think that everybody that's going into the Hockey Hall of Fame, that went in on Monday, that goes in the previous years, that's going to go in future years, they all have a story. They all have a magnificent personal story, people that have been influential in their lives. They're humbled by being recognized as a Hall of Fame, whether it be a player or a builder. They're humbled. They're just humbled by it. And every year, regardless of who's speaking, it's so impressive to hear their stories, because they're all just like the accomplishments. Their personal stories are all unique, but they're all Hall of Fame.
Yeah, amazing stories, but probably no one more humbled than Jeremy Roenick a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
I thought his speech was from the heart. I thought it was really good. Talk about a player. The humility in going up in what was he who did not win a Stanley Cup, probably the biggest hockey moment of his life, or arguably one of, and admitting to all his faults in front of everyone in the audience and on television, and admitting to all of his faults. I thought we saw an incredible dose of humility from Jeremy Roenick, and we saw a guy who really, you can tell the way he spoke, just how much he loved and still loves the game. I thought it was beautiful, really. I really did.
I'm not gonna bottom line is for Jeremy. And I think when he talked about Doug Wilson, players, they go over the course of their career and they have a lot of teammates that wear the same sweater. But what Jeremy was talking about, he was talking about teammates that are with you in life, that are with you in your hard times, that are with you to pick you up when things aren't going so well. And I thought that, life is about having good teammates. Hockey teams, you have to have good teammates. But when you have good teammates in life, you can have lots of success.
You're right about that. And when you have great collaborators like Craig Button, you're going to end up having a great podcast. And we just had another one. Thank you so much, my man. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, there you have it. Craig Button, TSN hockey analyst and director of scouting. Marinaro for Pau Montreal. Jot it down, www.peaumontreal.com. And you can check them out on Instagram as well, at Pau Montreal. Dr. Manish Khanna and his team, they have an incredible technology, which is called the technology for hair loss. And they got a free consultation by calling 514-989-7328. They also have the latest cosmetic technologies for laser injections, fillers, body contouring, facial treatments, all of that stuff. Dr. Manish Khanna, 2 locations, downtown Montreal and West Island. Pau Esthétique Médicale, PauMontreal.com. 514-989-7328. Special thanks to Sammy Cavallaro and Yellow Cavallaro of Master Control, and special thanks to all of you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night, right after the Canadiens and the Minnesota Wild. Once again, that game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night. So the game will probably be over at around 10:35 p.m. Eastern, 10:40 p.m. Eastern. We'll be on for an abbreviated version of the Sick Podcast, but we will be on, not at 10 p.m. Eastern, immediately following the game or 4 or 5 minutes right after, and I will be joined by Pierre Maguire. Once again, who's starting tomorrow, will be on every single weeknight, post-game edition, right here on the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro, following Canadiens games on weeknights. He'll be on pretty much on every single one between now and the end of the year, exclusively right here on the Sick Podcast. Special thanks to all of you watching. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, do so. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. For Sammy Daniello and Master Control, I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.